Hello and welcome. I am Mike Bankhead, your host, bass player, and songwriter from the Gem City, Dayton, Ohio. On this episode, I am talking to Taylor Ruckle, who is a journalist, and we're going to get very nerdy about music. Yes, we're discussing our favorite albums of the first quarter of 2022 here on the You Could Be My Aramis podcast. So get ready for a very detailed discussion. We each pick 5 albums that are our favorite so far this year. Here we go. How about you tell the folks where you are writing now? Where can people go find your work at the moment?
Sure. Yeah. So I am writing for a few different blogs. Post Trash is one. That's post-trash.com, I want to say. I always have to look these things up when I'm going to share them. Yes, post-trash.com is where I do a lot of interviews. I've also been writing some for a publication out on the West Coast called Flood Magazine. And on top of that, I'm pitching other places always, so hopefully I'll be able to share some more names soon. But Merry-Go-Round Magazine is a place I've written for, and always looking to expand that list.
Nice. And you also make music. Would you like to talk about that as well?
Oh, that's been a bit in limbo, but yes, I've been writing songs since I was in high school, basically, and very stop and start, very here and there in my free time. And right now the project name is Too Old Cat. Hopefully that will continue to be it by the time there's music to release. But sometime this year, I'm hoping to have at least a single out, and I'm plugging away on an album. That's
awesome. You should do it. You should absolutely do it.
Thank you. I'm very excited about what's happening, and hopefully I can share more concrete stuff soon.
So this is what makes you different from the vast majority of music journalists, is you actually kind of know what you're talking about. That was me being a little bit flippant.
A little bit, yeah. You'd be surprised. You get into it, and I realize how many folks are either musicians or DJs or do mixing and mastering and things. So it's more than you'd expect, but it does feel like it's sort of an outsider gig, doesn't it? It feels like it's a lot of people on the outside looking in.
It feels that way to we indie musician sorts.
Yeah.
So the reason we're going to have this conversation is we're going to talk about some of our favorite albums of the, I guess, 1/4 already over 2022 year.
The first quarter, I guess.
Yeah, the first quarter. Those 3 months went by kind of fast, but also kind of not fast, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's been a huge, I feel like it's been such a stacked year for releases so far. And it feels kind of like we've had a year's worth of stuff come out just from where I'm sitting, just from what I've been trying to catch up with, getting listened to,
Yeah. Yeah. So for the purposes of this, we narrowed it to 5 albums each, because otherwise we'll be here.
We'll just be here
forever.
all day. Yeah. Exactly.
Also, there's still 7 or 8 albums that are from this year on my listen to this list that I haven't gotten to yet.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and there's a ton of records for me too that I would love to give a second listen if I didn't have so many things to on my plate to get to. I guess I should ask you, what's your kind of listening routine like when you hear about a record? Do you just listen to it the one time, or do you give it a few passes to figure out what you think?
I love that question. I'm an old dude, and I grew up in the times where you heard the single on the radio, and if you wanted to hear the rest of the record, you had to go buy the CD or borrow it from a friend. And in the before times, I was conditioned to listen to albums straight through. I know that is not the modern listening habit, but it is still my listening habit. So when someone tells me about an artist or an album that they recommend, I tend to listen to it straight through. Sometimes I like it right away. Sometimes I need 3 to 5 listens before I get everything that's going on. And unlike when I was young, now that I actually know how to play, I listen a little bit differently. I listen for different things. So of the 5 albums I've selected, I've listened to them all at least 3 times, except for one, which I've only listened to twice. I feel like I don't really know an album unless it gets that many listens. How about you? What's your pattern?
Yeah, I very much the same in that, especially if I'm reviewing something, I always listen a minimum of 3 times. And then, I'll spot check certain things to make sure I have my references right. But, when I thought recently about something when I was a kid, my mom would always tell me if I didn't want to eat my vegetables or something, you don't know if you like something until you've tried it 3 times, was always sort of the rule, like, no complaining until, you've really given this a shot. And I feel like that's something I've kind of taken to heart just in my critical life in terms of whether or not I feel like I get something. Is I try to give things multiple tries. That said, some things on this list I've listened to a lot, and some things I've listened to not as much. Some things I listen to once in there as a whole and appreciate them, and then mostly come back for certain tracks here and there. I am also very much a full album listener, but a lot of times I'm not sitting down. I'm going about my day, about the house. I'll sort of jump song to song from time to time. So I can go either way there.
So we do kind of have that in common. We both of us apparently still believe in the album in itself as an art form.
Yes, I have a pick here that I think you're really going to be interested in, that I chose specifically because I thought you would appreciate it as an experiment in the album as a format.
Well, let's jump right to it. And
should we start right to it?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up. I have a notepad where I'm keeping my notes, and so these things that you're gonna tell me about that I haven't heard, they're going in the notes, and then I'll listen to them in the next week or so.
All right. Well, I'm honored to have the first go. This record. Okay, so this is sort of a Trojan horse pick, right? So I'll explain. There's this band called Me Rex that I've really been into over the past few months. And they're a band from London, very wordy, very emotional, kind of indie pop rock stuff. And they're putting out a record this year that is a combination of 2 EPs, one of which is already out and one is not. All of their EPs are themed around dinosaurs. So it's the first one is Pterodactyl and the second one is Plesiosaur. This is a band, they put out 2 of my favorite singles this year so far. One of them from Pterodactyl and one from the forthcoming Plesiosaur. Skin It Itches is the first, and Jupiter Pluvius is the second. And the reason I wanted to tell you about this band, though, is that you should definitely listen to these songs. I think they're excellent. Some really great belted kind of choruses, some really great, just amazing rhythmic phrasing in these lyrics. But also, they put out a record last year that I found out about after I started listening to their new stuff. Their debut album was in 2021, and it's called Mega Bear. Have you heard of this record?
I have not, and I'm going to need you to spell the name of the artist, please.
Yeah, of course. Me, M-E, Rex, R-E-X, as in T-Rex, but me.
That's clever.
Yeah, they're that kind of a clever band, But their debut record, Mega Bear, came out last year. And this is a record that is formatted as 52 tracks that are all 30 seconds or so. They're all in roughly the same key and the same tempo, and there is no fixed order. So the idea is that you shuffle it, and there's this impossibly huge number of possible combinations that will all, one way or another, fit together into a different full album.
That's interesting.
It's very different, and it's very unusual, and it's a weird listening experience. It sort of breaks your brain trying to wrap your head around it and remember how songs work. But it's a tight sort of half-hour experience, and it's different every time. And as somebody who listens to a lot of albums, on a daily basis, it's one of those things that really sort of down the door and made me think about, well, how do albums work? How do songs work? It's all about kind of 30-second chunks of goodness anyway. So why not just write the 30-second chunks and then distribute them differently and mix them all up how you see fit?
So would you recommend starting by listening to that in sequence and then going to shuffle, or just shuffle from the get-go?
That's the fun thing, is there is no sequence. It's all shuffled from the get-go. There's no fixed start song and end song. They're all sort of in media res, which is weird. But there's a website they have, actually. I'll find the URL so I can just say that. They have a bespoke website for this, so you can listen to it on shuffle with no gaps or anything. And that website is megabear.co.uk. Megabear being another fun, clever way of saying Ursa Major, of course.
It might have taken me a while to get to that.
It's a lot of that with this band. They're very clever and very thoughtful lyricism, great melodies, just a lot to love. I recommend starting with The singles from these last two EPs, definitely, to see if they're your cup of tea. But from there, if you can kind of get into the sound of them, this experience I think is a really neat one.
Awesome. I'm gonna feel so bad for going like super mainstream rock band with my first one after
your show.
After that craziness,
it's your show, man.
So Feeder put out a new album this year, and they're another English band, so we can segue, right?
All right.
You just talked about an English band. I'm going to talk about an English band. Have you heard of this one?
I have never heard of Feeder.
They're not English. They're Welsh.
Welsh.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure, and I just Googled it. So they're British. That still makes them Brits, though.
You don't want to mix that up, but yes, that's still a segue.
Yeah, I don't want to offend the Welsh.
Naturally.
But let's say it this way: they live on the same island as Mirex.
Yes.
Just a different part of the island. Feeder is a band that got a little bit of popularity stateside in the mid to late 90s. They had a hit in one of those ubiquitous 90s teeny bopper teenage movies. And then as far as Americans are concerned, they kind of disappeared. Unless you were totally a fan of what they were doing and tried to keep track of them. I got like their first 4 albums, and then they disappeared for me, and I realized a couple years ago that they kept making records. So I've been trying to catch up on their catalog. But they dropped a new one this year, and it is their 11th full-length studio album. It is called Torpedo. And if you like guitars and rock and roll, go get this. The opening track is something that most artists today don't do. In fact, I would say it's the opposite of Mirex. The first track on this album is really, really long by modern listening standards. It is, I'm going to go get the time on it real quick because I don't want to quote it wrong. The opening track, The Healing, 6 minutes and 8 seconds. And it starts off with like pretty strings and paint some atmosphere. Then they just beat you over the head with loud guitars. In this era of, hey, you got to write a pop song that's got to be 3 minutes or less or people won't listen to it. That's not what this is. The record's only like 10 songs, but none of them are shorter than 3 minutes. This is what they do. They make fully formed musical thoughts. There's a lot of actual just rocking going on when they're not singing. If you are a person who liked what this band did in the 90s, you will like this. It's a similar sound as far as the way they do their guitars, but just they've grown up a lot more since then. So a little more mature on the lyric writing, and they're just good songwriters. So if you like rock and roll and Brits, go check out Torpedo by Feeder.
Sounds great. Yeah, I'm bookmarking this one for sure.
You're going to have to turn that one up real loud. I'm warning you in advance.
Is there a particular track you want to focus from this, or is it more of a, full experience?
It is a full experience. I will say that the title track, Torpedo, is probably my favorite right now. And also Wall of Silence, which is the shortest track on the record, might be my second favorite. But this is one of the ones that I've listened to like 5 or 6 times as opposed to just 3. And it'll get more listens. I feel bad about which I know I shouldn't because they don't need me, but I feel bad about being out on them for a while and then like, oh, they're still around and making music. Why did I not know this? They're good. They're still good after all this time, and not every artist can say that, right? So.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a pleasant surprise, I think, sometimes when you can check out and then come back and appreciate a band again like that. I think that's its own kind of pleasure.
Yeah. So if you're new to this band like Taylor is, listen to this one first. Oh, it's good. Listen to this one first.
Yes.
And then if you like it, go back to their first record. Now, the difference in production will be there. It's similar guitar tone and such. The technology is different now, so there'll be a little bit different sound as far as the production. But I dug out that debut album last week again, and I think it still holds up. But part of that might be I have an emotional connection to it, right? But yeah, listen to this one first, folks, if you don't know this band, because it's their newest thing. And if you like it, then go back to the beginning and listen in order. They have one or two, what do the kids call them? Bangers? One or two bangers on each record.
That's good. That's good. I could go for some of this '90s stuff. I'm very excited to dig in with that.
All right, your turn.
Well, how about we keep it rolling with the rock and roll then? Because a record that this is another. I promise they aren't all cheating, but this one is kind of cheating because the record I want to talk about is Nothing's Ever Fine by Oceanator, which is a record that
hold up, that's not out yet.
Not yet. Not yet. That comes out at the end of the week in which we are recording this. Hopefully by the time this is available to people, they'll be able to go check it out.
This is you using your insider access.
A little bit I am. And it's only because it's really good and I really want to make sure that I get this out there. And I don't know, I don't get podcast invites every day, Mike. You know, I can't just like sit on this and hope
should. I loved that first record that they put out. I guess it's more she than they.
Yeah, she is a solo artist who pulls in kind of other people to work on the records and to tour with. It's her brother who co-produces it, you know, her music with her, I think, pretty consistently. But yeah, the project Oceanator is Elise Okusami, who is from who is based currently in Brooklyn, is from the DMV area originally, which is very exciting to me. She grew up in Maryland, going to high school in DC, and playing in a lot of the local venues around here. So I got to talk to her about this record, and it's always very fun to talk to somebody about DC music scene stuff. Yeah, Things I Never Said was this really excellent 90s sounding rock and roll record, big guitar riffs, just real nice heavy sounds, and very upfront, very honest, personal lyrics, very straightforwardly about the end of the world. And it just so happened to come out in summer 2020, which was very apropos. This new record is very much a sequel. It's still dealing with a lot of that, but she has a baritone guitar now, so it's even heavier and bigger, louder. And it's a real sequel. You know, it's more conceptual in its way, and more collaborators. It's sort of just like more of the goodness and more people involved. Barty Strange co-produced this record, who's been also, you know, on a hot streak. Yeah. Jeff Rosenstock plays on it. David Combs from Bad Moves, which is another DC band. It's very fun. It's very personal, and it really, there's some songs on this one that really hit me where I live, you know, dealing with things like anxiety and whatnot. The first song on this record, Nightmare Machine, is a great hook. So that's really my only recommendation when this record comes out, is listen to it. Start at the beginning. And it's another record that is built as an experience. There's this recurring guitar motif that flows through the whole thing. Oh, cool. And ties it all together. So it's another, I guess this is another running theme here, is we're all about the full album experiences.
You talked to Oceanator. Does that mean that you have an article coming?
Yes. So shameless self-promotion. My interview with Elise will be up on Post Trash sometime around the release. And it was a great time. We talked about, there's some songs on this record that are specifically about DC. So we talked about that. And we talked about some of her touring experience over the past year or two, and you know, anxiety naturally, and a lot of the guitar tones in this record we got some pretty granular conversation about. So she's great. It was a great conversation, and see her on tour with Laura Jane Grace, and then also with Pup, and then also with Pedro the Lion. Big year of tours for Oceanator. So keep an eye out.
Oh, but sounds like she's about to blow up.
Yeah, it's been really cool, you know, it's really neat when you get into an artist on their first record and you can tell that, you know, they're going places, and then the second record, the stakes are higher, and it's a real level up kind of move. So it's very exciting to watch all this happen, even, you know, as somebody who is just is a big fan.
That's cool. I wonder how many other interviews that she's done for promotion have gotten into granular guitar tones.
I'm sure. You know, it's funny. There are still some dedicated like guitar publications. There's I want to say Guitar Mag is one. Maybe I've seen interviews with other artists where they walk through the pedal board. You know, I had talked to Marissa Paternoster from Screaming Females, who of course is the is the consummate guitar hero, and she had done some interviews I saw with some guitar focused internet publications. So don't rule it out. There might be. I'm sure there's lots of people out there who are very into the the exact pedal settings.
I'm a bass player, so a lot of that stuff just kind of washes over me.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, you went solo artist named as a band for your second one, so I'm going to do solo artist named as a band.
We're keeping it rolling with the segues. I love it.
It's not probably going to work for the entire conversation, but like as long as I can get it to work, let's make it work. So
I'm going to have to pull out a real reach after this one. Go ahead.
So this is going to be Maneka. Album, yes. Which was on your list to listen to, and I don't know if you got to it yet.
I did.
All right. So the gentleman who's behind this is named Devin, and Maneka is his project name. And apparently he used to be a guitarist for Speedy Ortiz, who are super indie darling types. That's a band like I know who they are, but I've never actually listened to them, so that doesn't mean a lot to me. But I know it'll mean a lot to some people.
Sadie's everywhere in the music press, of course.
Yes. See, that's why I know who they are, because he's everywhere in the music press. So this gentleman apparently used to work in that band and now is doing his own thing. The record that just came out is called Dark Matters, which is kind of a play on words. See?
Oh, I didn't get that until just now.
Yeah. Well, Devin is a person of color, He's a black guy making rock and roll, and as Bartees and Oceanator and probably a whole lot of other artists will tell you, that's not the easiest thing in the modern music business, especially for promotion and the way a lot of people of color are treated in the rock world when they're trying to get press or coverage or book shows, which is crazy because rock and roll is black music, but I digress. So his record Dark Matters is told from the point of view of him. It's experiences that he has or feelings that he has, and it's, if you pay attention to the lyrics, there's no, he's not holding back here. My favorite song on the record is called Runaway. And that's for the lyrics. I'll just let people Google the lyrics so it'll hit you properly.
Yeah.
I'm not a guitarist, but I really appreciate the guitar work he does in the song called Bluest Star, which is the last track on the record. A lot of the songs are not, they're not your typical Western verse, chorus, verse, bridge, chorus, out song structure. I feel like he intentionally tries to be atypical with the song structure, but still make it hooky, which is something that I've tried to do myself, but not nearly as atypical as he does it. You'll have to listen to the album to understand what I'm saying, dear listeners.
Yes.
But let's just say that after a chorus, if you're thinking that another verse is coming, you probably aren't getting that on this record a lot. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. It's imaginative, it's different, it's quirky. Apparently he has a jazz background, so he's got a couple of little jazzy interludes where he steps away from the indie rock sound and just does a whole bunch of noodling. And this is the one I've only listened to twice. I need more listens in order to, I feel like there's a lot of nuance on this album that I haven't gotten yet because I haven't listened to it enough. And not so much lyrically, but musically, I think there's more to it than what I've found so far. So I will personally be listening to this more. And yeah, so far it's of my top 5 of the first quarter.
Yeah, I like this record a lot. I have only listened to it the one time. I need more time with it, but I will say that there's something about it. The singles didn't necessarily grab me right away, and then as soon as I sort of sat down with it, I realized oh yeah, there's a lot happening here that I need to spend some time with. Runaway also was the standout track to me on my first listen. I think that is a really great. If you were to pick one, I would have picked the same one. So. Yeah, just co-signing all of that you said. I think it's a really interesting record. There's a lot to it. Structurally very cool, the intros and whatnot, and then the jazzy interludes. Very cool record.
I should probably clarify that Dark Matter, if you listen to the first track, it's really talking about sciencey stuff and outer space, but I think he chose that title on purpose for the double meaning, and I'm going to stick with that.
I think so. I think it's a title that can accommodate a lot of interpretations.
Yeah, at least 3 I've got. So We agree on one. That's cool. It's nice that we found that there's one that I listen to that, because let's put it this way, you're a lot younger and cooler than me, and your hand is more on the pulse of what the modern indie rock listener is into than mine. So yeah, I'm
well then
like,
well then
proud
let's
of
say you
myself.
then let's say you're older and more knowledgeable than me and have had you have many more years of listening on me, and that is an asset that I am still working on putting in my time with.
See, we can learn from each other. That's why
Exactly.
this is cool. So your third one there, Taylor.
Yeah, let's say this is another solo artist. How about that?
Cool.
And so that's my connecting thread. This record is "Don't Go Throwing Roses in My Grave" by Gregor Barnett, and this is was sort of a surprise for me. I'm a big fan of the band The Menzingers. Do you know of them?
I do not.
They're a Pennsylvania, pop punk kind of band, and they're one I got very into in college. From my very cool you finger on the pulse music friend turned me onto them. Shout out to Cade. And this is one of the two singers slash guitarists from the Menzingers, and it's his first solo album, taking this more rootsy kind of Heartland rock vibe, which turns out to be a really, really good, weirdly good fit for him. The song I'd recommend as the standout is called "Driving Through the Night." It's all right there. You know what that song is like. It's really good, really good. I don't have a ton to say about it. It's just a really fun, solid record. And I happened to see him. I caught a show. I went down to Richmond to meet up with my friend. Not having heard the record, went in blind and was just kind of blown away by how solid it was, because I wasn't so hot on the last couple Menzingers records, and then I was pleasantly surprised. It's really, really strong, great energy, solid songs. It's been a really nice for me and my partner, just like put on in the car kind of record, or when we're hanging out around the house.
Cool. That's on my list now.
Yeah, that can be a quick one. We don't have to dwell on it. Like I said, I don't have a ton to say about it. It's just a very good record.
All right, so watch this. You just talked about a male solo artist.
Yes.
And
Okay.
a record
Yes.
that was better than you thought it was going to be. So
all right.
I'll go male solo artist.
Oh, I know where we're going here.
Eddie Vedder.
Yep.
Of Pearl Jam, the grizzled industry veteran. He released another solo album this year, and of course I'm going to listen to it. I like his voice, and I've been a fan of that dude since I was a teenager. The new record is a lot better than I thought it would be. In fact, as soon as I listened to it, I ran it back for a second listen. I was surprised at how much I liked it. Does that mean it's perfect? No. There's a couple of things on there that I'm like, But there's a couple of songs that sound like they could be Pearl Jam songs, which makes sense. It's his voice, and Eddie does share some of the writing duties in that band. And on occasion, you can see this in their liner notes. On occasion, Eddie writes the entire song, and then the band just, arranges it for the band. So some of these songs will remind you of Pearl Jam. A couple of them will not. There's a song on there called Mrs. Mills that sounds like he stole it from the Beatles in the 60s.
Oh, wow.
It sounds like it came right. In fact, I had to I don't really know the Beatles as well as I should. I know all their hits. So I had to Google it to make sure that he didn't cover a Beatles song. That's how much it sounds like them. And he's got a duet with Sir Elton John on this album, which does not sound remotely like a Pearl Jam song. In fact, it's weird. And the first time I heard it, I thought it was out of place here. But the more I listen to it, the more I kind of like it. Yeah, if you get a chance to co-write something with Elton John, you're going to go ahead and take that chance. I love
that Elton John has been on the features and co-writes circuit, right? He was on that Lil Nas X record last year, and I feel like for the last decade or so, he's just kind of been all over, make a song with everybody. I love it.
Well, at this point in his career, what else does he have to be like?
Yeah,
he's got nothing to prove.
Right.
He's probably just chilling and what interesting thing can I do today, right? So
right.
I kind of get it. But anyway, if you like rock and roll and the occasional other sounds, there's some folky sounds or some poppy sounds. Yeah, go get this one. I thought it was good.
This one is called Earthling, is that right?
This one is called Earthling. Yeah, I should have led with that. That's his newest one. Is called Earthling. Yes.
Am I to infer any kind of David Bowie references here?
I don't know. I haven't listened to enough of Bowie to have caught that from the lyrics.
Fair enough.
Definitely not from the music, though.
All right.
if you find any, like, tell me and be like,
I'll let you know.
were wrong.
Yeah.
This is a David Bowie. Again, Bowie's one of those dudes where I know all the, like, quote, hits and singles and such.
Yeah, but you would need, to spend about as much time listening as he spent recording to even, scratch the surface there.
Right. And there are plenty of people in my musician peer group who are like, why haven't you listened to every single Bowie record? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I will get around to it at some point. I will.
It's like, do you even know how many of them there are, guys? Because it's a little bit extreme.
It is, but I will. All right. Your turn.
All right. Nope. This is where I'm gonna have to. Well, okay. How about another solo artist?
Okay.
How about that? That's the best I've got for you.
Okay.
So this record is Heterosexuality by Shamir. I first heard about Shamir on his self-titled record, which came out a couple years ago. And then I saw him open for Courtney Barnett at the 930 Club in DC back in February.
That's a cool venue.
It was a great venue. It was a great show. Courtney Barnett slayed, absolutely, brought the house down. Great show. But but Shamir was the opener, and his new record is called Heterosexuality, which is a very tongue-in-cheek title, because this is a record that deals very directly and very intensely with his kind of gender identity and sexuality, and by extension, the very kind of bleak state of the conversation around LGBTQ rights in this country. So it's definitely a heavier record. It's difficult at times. It's also very sonically diverse. It's this very, I haven't said a single word about the sound yet, I realize. It's very kind of glitchy and industrial at certain points, electronic kind of pop sounding, other times just more straightforwardly, poppy, good rhythms. But really, Shamir is this incredible powerhouse vocalist. I cannot do justice with words to the voice that he puts into this record. So that's one of those things. Again, the song Cisgender, I think, was one of the big ones ahead of this, or the first track, and I think also was a single. It's called Gay Agenda. You see where this is going. It's all very upfront.
A lot of sarcasm.
Yes, it's all very upfront with that, and but it's a record that really goes a lot of places, sound wise. There's a song that gives me kind of a bossa nova vibe on top of all the other, various pops and electronics. And again, I think the main attraction is the voice, and it's again challenging listen, but I think it's very worthwhile. And I highly recommend. He's another artist with a huge catalog, so definitely worth delving into. I think this is like his 8th album or something.
Wow.
So yeah, which I had not been keeping pace with, having only gotten in a couple of years ago. But if you have some time, I highly recommend. It's a very good record.
So I found Shamir's Instagram, and he appears to be a left-handed guitarist.
Oh, that's so funny. That went over my head watching the show.
As a left-handed person, even though I don't play guitar that way, left-handed people just kind of jump out at me when I see them,
Yeah.
So you mentioned industrial, glitchy kind of sound.
Yeah.
How did that work in a live setting? Like, how many pieces were in this band?
The live set was a little bit more basic. It was, guitar, bass, drums, if I remember right. And so it wasn't quite as, built out as the records. Still a very solid, live act, but just a kind of a different take, not the kind of artist who gets up and plays it and it sounds like the record. Very just kind of power trio sort of things.
Okay. See, I was thinking, all right, if that's the sound, then maybe they were triggering some samples or some loops or had something there to give more weight. But if they just played like as a power trio,
yeah,
that's interesting, because if that's the sound, you'd have to almost like rearrange it for a live performance with just a 3-piece.
Right. Yeah. So he's a good guitarist too. So that's also a plus. There's a lot going on here to appreciate.
Outstanding. See, you left me room to match you, which I like. So Shamir, African-American solo artist. I see Shamir and I raise you Jensen McCrae.
Okay.
Partially African-American and also partially Jewish, I believe. A solo artist who kind of got indie girl popular when she dropped a tribute joke track on Twitter for a basically trying to write a Phoebe Bridgers song,
Okay.
and everyone liked it so much that she decided that like she went ahead and finished the song.
I've heard of this. Yes.
It's great.
Okay.
It's not on the record. It was a song about going to Dodger Stadium and getting your vaccine, but like,
Yes, I know this song. Okay, now I know who we're talking about.
yeah. So that was like she went viral for that. She ended up putting it on the EP that she put out, I believe, either last year or the year before. A couple of those songs on the EP ended up on this, her debut full length. In fact, it looks like 1, 2, 3 of those songs ended up on the full length. The full length is called Are You Happy Now? This is meant to be listened to as an album. There's 15 songs. There's 3 segues in there. Headlock Part 1, parentheses mother. Headlock Part 2, parentheses father. Headlock Part 3, parentheses daughter. She's definitely telling... There's definitely a narrative here, and I think this album is better if you listen to it in order. It's well produced, by which I mean there are people actually playing instruments, and it doesn't sound like it was done all in the box, and I don't... As an old guy, I like people to actually play instruments. Now, there is definitely some in-the-box production done, but there's some real instruments here. I think she went to school for music. I think she's one of those folks that went to Berkeley. So, she's got the skills, she's got the education. Jensen knows how to write a hook, knows how to write lyrics. Like, the songs are great. I'm surprised, like, this is it. I'm sure there's more coming, right? It's you can't take over the world with just one album, or else we all would have done that. So I'm sure there's a promotion plan around this, a touring plan around this. And let me say something about this release that made me like nod and smile, and I don't smile often. She dropped this on a Tuesday, which all of us old people know that is the right and proper day that album should be released.
That's the album day.
Right?
That's so funny.
And what was funny to me was like, when she announced it on Twitter that it was out, and a bunch of people are like, "Why are you releasing this on a Tuesday?" And I'm like, "Yeah, if you know, you know." Have you listened to this one yet?
No, I haven't gotten around to it. This is Are You Happy Now? Is that the title?
Yes.
Yeah, that's one I definitely, that just jumped up top of my list. This is, somebody whose name I've seen out and about, and have not put the time in yet, but I'm very excited and appreciate the recommendation.
It's a bunch of sad songs, so be prepared to not be like...
Well, I spend a lot of my time, listening to sad songs, so...
Cool. All right, number 5 for Taylor.
All right, number 5. What do I have left here? Oh, I'm glad I get to end with this one. We're past the point of segues here. This one I'm just going to have to throw at you. The band is called Howless.
How do you spell that?
That's Howless. Howless. The record is called To Repel Ghosts. And this is a Mexico City band. And they draw in a lot of post-punk, dream pop, goth. There's a little bit of shoegaze in there for you that you might enjoy.
Oh, I love shoegaze.
Yeah.
Have we had this conversation? Because you seem to know that I like shoegaze.
We've talked about Hum.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that's part of that. I listened to that record finally after you recommended it to me a couple of years ago, and that's a great record. The new Hum, the most recent one.
Yeah,
I guess it's not new anymore.
No, I mean it's considering that they disappeared for 20 years, it's still new to me.
Anyway, Howless. So this band mostly is more on the earlier side of the 80s, or maybe the mid. There's some stuff that sounds very much like The Cure. There's some stuff that sounds very much like the Cocteau Twins. And it's all kinds of sounds that are very saturated right now. There's a lot of bands that are trying to do the post-punk thing, that are trying to do the dream pop thing. And a lot of the buzzier stuff is just falling so flat for me in terms of what is high in the critical discourse right now. But this is a band that is just really solid and not reinventing the wheel, not necessarily breaking new ground, but just writing very good songs in this style and sort of melding a few very good things together. Very listenable, super well produced, and some real knockout songs. Levels is a song that I would recommend to check in if you want to get a feel for what this band is about. There's a couple others like I want to say Rain and Ice is another great one. Highly recommend. And they're a little bit derivative. I think the risk of playing to these kinds of classic sounds is that sometimes you can end up sounding, a little bit like that. But I'm definitely keeping an eye on them going forward. I think they could really break out and do something really unique. It's a really strong first record.
Based on the song titles you mentioned and the album title, it would appear they sing in English and not Spanish.
Yes, that's correct. There's a little bit of Spanish in the sort of studio chatter on the record, but yes, the lyrics, for as much as it matters, because it's a little bit of the Cocteau Twins thing where you can't really hear what the words are. You can tell that there are lines in English, but a lot of it's sort of beside the point, But yeah, very New Order is another reference point here. There's some little electronic sort of dancey bits that also crop up. A lot going on. I'd compare it to like the way the first U2 album was very much sort of written off as like, well, they're just, playing the style that lots of other people are doing and whatever. But then they ended up becoming a much more interesting and innovative band. And so my fingers crossed is that this band, I think, is also one that has the chops to kind of break out of what they're doing and do something really cool.
How did you discover this band?
Press email. I got this, I get a lot of releases from the same kinds of press companies, and I try to listen in when I haven't heard of a band before. And this was a lucky break where I put on the single and thought, oh, this is really solid. I need to know more. And, just asked for the info in the advanced stream and sort of followed it to release.
That's awesome. I guess it's nice to know that every now and then that actually works.
It's definitely hard, and everybody's oversaturated, but every now and then you can sort of pluck something out and get something really good.
All right, so it is time for my last one. It's also a band, but they are not from Mexico City.
Okay.
They are from the Windy City, Chicago. And that is Urge Overkill. Yet another 90s band. I know. We can't run from our influences, people. 90s band, fellow Midwesterners. Another one of those bands that disappeared for more than a decade. But they just dropped a record called Oui, as in French for yes, oui. It has a picture of what appears to be a bison or a bull of some sort on the front. I've only done this one 4 listens. Here's what I'll say about it. If you like Urge Overkill, go get it. It's an Urge Overkill record. The guy's voice is the same. After all these years, it still sounds the same. The songs are decent. I wouldn't put it up there with Saturation or the follow-up to Saturation, which I think was their 3rd and 4th albums, or their 5th and 6th albums, or something like that. They actually formed in the 80s and released music all through the 90s. But it's a good album, and I think the opening track is a cover, and I don't remember who wrote it. I dig it. It made my top 5. It probably wouldn't if I'd have listened to, those other 5 to 7 that I was going to get to.
It's so funny though. In the best way, I did cue this one up as I was getting ready today and listened to it, and I immediately thought, oh yeah, this is Mike. This is Mike for sure. It's very much in that very 90s, that sort of power pop kind of thing that I definitely hear a lot of the influence of in your own music. So it was very cool to hear that. Yeah,
they still. Again, I don't think they're breaking any new ground here, but it doesn't suck. And isn't that what we're after? Is music that
I think so. Honestly, I think so. I more and more I really stick with and rock with the albums that just do what they do really well, and that's been sort of I try to balance between that and the important quote unquote records that also come out. I try to balance and try to find my way equally. And obviously, there are those big quote unquote important records that also are just as much fun. But I think you have to sort of find your lane for things that just sound good to you, And
you're a professional. So since you're a professional, that means you're probably listening to a lot of music that might not be your thing, but you might have to write about it anyway. How does that work?
Well, the truth of it is, I really I don't get a lot of assignments. I tend to sort of pick and choose based on what is coming up that I know I have at least some passing familiarity with or some interest in. because, more and more, I feel like you don't have to write about things that don't interest you. And I think that people appreciate less and less when people write about things that don't interest them. I feel like when a record comes out, people want to hear from, somebody who has at least some investment in it being good, whether they like it or not. And I think that is sort of something that I try to abide by also. There's times where at Post Trash, we'll talk about, oh, it would be cool if we could interview this artist, and I'll do sort of a background, like I'll do some Googling and some listening and decide whether or not it's something I could, if something I could possibly get interested in or put the time in and motivate myself to spend the time with it. Because that's the other thing, is that it's all very based on my own drive, because I'm not being paid by anybody. And so it really does come down to what I can make myself listen to 3 times. And there are certain genres and spaces where that's more likely to happen, and others where it's less likely to happen. And I'm always trying to, build on that and also more clearly define where those lines are. But a lot of it really is discretion.
Okay. That's it. We've each talked about our 5. So
yeah,
maybe reconvene early July and do this again for second quarter albums.
Can I throw out some honorable mentions?
Absolutely. Throw them.
I was a really big fan of the record Diaspora Problems by Soul Glow, and I wanted to make sure that I said those words on this podcast, because that is a record that came out that I had been, another one that I've been kind of following, waiting for it to come out, and I haven't written anything about it, but is one that I again think is really really good, really valuable, very very heavy, very hard, very it's real, like it's a real punk record in the purest sense of the word, just in terms of it being very anti-establishment and very loud and energetic and topical and relevant. Highly recommend. It came out on Epitaph Records, I want to say, and is just a really killer punk record. Oh, also my honorable mention is Terror Twilight by Pavement, which you might know did not come out this year.
I haven't listened to any Pavement records other than the one that everyone listened to.
Crooked Rain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will just put the word out. Terror Twilight is getting an expanded reissue. It's their last record. It was produced by Nigel Godrich, who of course...
Oh, that's Radiohead's guy.
Yes. So they made their last ditch kind of album effort. They went into the studio with the Radiohead guy, who wanted to sort of make a straighter, kind of more approachable band out of them, and failed utterly at doing that, but made a really interesting misfire of a record. And it's coming out with a revised track list, which was Godrich's original track order that was rejected by the band. So it's just a little kind of nugget, if you're a fan, that I think is really interesting, where it's like kind of a whole new perspective on this record that's been out for ages. I reviewed the reissue, which I don't usually care to do, because I feel like that's sort of a cheap, hey, this thing is still cool move. But with the renewed, track order, I thought it was a really cool opportunity.
So I'm not a Pavement fan, and Crooked Rain, I didn't get it, but I was a lot younger then. I might get it now. Like, I wasn't cool enough yet, I guess. But I might be somewhat obsessed with Radiohead. And here's what I don't understand from what you just described. If you're going to go out of your way to hire Radiohead's guy to produce your record, shouldn't you just do whatever that guy says?
Yeah, you would think that. But of course, this is a band that, was very iconoclastic and was very sort of doing their own thing for their whole career. And also was sort of at the end of their rope creatively as a unit. And so they go into the studio, and it sort of winds up being Stephen Malkmus, the frontman, and Nigel Godrich making a record together, and the rest of the band sort of trying to keep pace and not get completely left by the wayside. You would think, but I think Nigel Godrich isn't really necessarily the kind of producer who's going to come in and lay down the law, as much as he's going to make suggestions. Like they talk about in the interview booklet that comes with this record, that they had originally gone in to record at Sonic Youth's studio space, and it just didn't have the facilities that somebody like Nigel Godrich was looking for. And so they record for a few days, and finally Nigel is like, this is not working out. May I suggest this other studio? And they all finally truck it down, in New York City to Nigel Godrich's preferred space, where they have less time and have to spend more money and they're sort of in a rush to get everything down on tape.
See, now I'm going to go listen to that now just because of that story.
It's interesting. It's an interesting record. It's weird. Maybe, you know what? If you don't like early Pavement, this might be the record for you, because it is not quite like that. So that's my recommendation.
Fantastic. Thanks. Well, yeah, let's do this again in a couple months.
Thanks so much for having me and for giving me the time. I really appreciate having these conversations.
Thank you once again to Taylor for taking the time to get deep into some album conversation with me. And also thank you, dear listener, for being here. Hey, you know what? We recorded this episode before the Oceanator album dropped. It's out now. And here's a secret. Well, it's not a secret. I love it. The new Oceanator album is very good. Every bit as Taylor advertised. Go listen to it. I'll link to his interview with Elise from Oceanator in the show notes. I'll have another episode for you this coming Friday. See you then. Bye.